Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Come Back Stronger, brought to you by the Fasig Brooks Law Offices. I'm Dana Brooks, and I'm joined with my law partner today, Kimmy Hogan.
Hey everybody.
Hey Kimmy. I'm really excited about the show we have today. We have an amazing guest. This is a woman I had the pleasure of meeting, and I picked up her book and I read the whole thing. I could not put it down. It's a substantial book, but her journey is amazing. And we are talking about Elizabeth Rosario. She goes by Ellie, and she's well known to a lot of people in our community. She's made a wonderful career for herself and a name for herself. But you know, she didn't have it easy. You know, like so many people who have a Come Back Stronger story. She's done a lot of suffering, and her children have, and her family has, and she's gone through so much to get where she is now, where she is a solid, stable provider, and her children in a safe, you know, comfortable, positive home. Did you watched the interview with her and probably talked to Carrie Roan, our law partner who interviewed her. Absolutely. What were your takeaways? What did you think about Ellie's story?
Well, I love she focuses on mind over matter.
Yeah.
And so every step of the way, every trial that she went through, she said, I'm going to do this, one foot in front of the other, and she kept moving through. I was really impressed by the fact that she went through FSU undergrad with a 1-year-old, taking her daughter to class, going to work, exercising, just amazing that she fit it all in.
Yeah, and I think that's what so many strong women do when they're faced with a challenge. Sometimes they just pick up one more thing to do. And that's how she is. She is originally from Puerto Rico, and she was brought to Tallahassee, of all places. Can you imagine living in Puerto Rico and all that big, you know, United States of America, and they said, okay, Tallahassee's where you're going to be. We're going to take you out of your environment, put you here in your teenage years, and you are going to have one heck of a culture shock, young lady. So she did, but she, you know, and she of course met some setbacks. It's hard to, you know, meet a bunch of people if you didn't grow up and come up through school with them. But she had some challenges. She was a young mother, a teenage mother, but she didn't think for a minute that that was going to be the end of her story. So I cannot wait to come back after the break and get into Ellie's story with everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll be right back after this.
I recently had a new client, and she suffered a mild traumatic brain injury. Okay. And she had no idea what had happened that caused her to be injured.
Gotcha.
But it turns out she had fallen into a pit at an oil change station. And it was 100% their fault.
Oh wow!
But her injury made her not even understand
her injury, and
it
makes me so frustrated because folks that suffer concussions or mild traumatic brain injuries, it's really difficult for them to know what happened and to understand the difference in what their life was and what it is now because of the nature of their condition. And so the insurance companies need to recognize the full value of that.
Instead of taking advantage of that very unique situation.
It took her family telling her, you need to call an attorney. Her family coming with her to the appointment to say, these are the differences, to get her in there, and now we're able to help her.
I love that. And we are back. We're about to have our first segment of the Ellie Rosario interview with Carrie Roan. Take a look.
Thank you so much for coming with us, Ellie Rosario, or Elizabeth Rosario.
Thank you for having me.
Your story is so interesting, from, you know, being a teen mom here in Tallahassee, and then, you know, getting married to a man that you didn't know was an alcoholic and overcoming that, and raising a beautiful family on your own, becoming a triathlete and an Ironman.
Yep, all of that in between there.
I want to talk about all of it, because you've really been down and through some significant obstacles, and you've come out the other side to be a published author and doing so many neat things. So I want to hear about all of it.
Okay, so where do I start?
So start with, in high school, you went to Lincoln.
I went to Lincoln.
And you got pregnant.
And I got pregnant.
With your daughter. How old's your daughter now?
25.
Okay.
Oh, it gives me chills. You look my big baby girl. Now it's not baby girl anymore.
You look like you're 25 though.
Well, that's what people say, but I'm like, no, the wrinkles are there. The acne's popping at my 40s.
So how was that? What kind of challenges did you face as a teen mom?
So many people told me I would never make it, including the counselors of the school. It was like, your life is over. Just go ahead and get your GED. You know, you're not going to amount to anything. And that wasn't me. I was a straight A student. I was honor student. Like, what are you talking about? Then I remember then I got accepted to FSU. And then I'm at FSU with my daughter.
How old was your daughter when you were going to FSU?
Hold on, you're taking me back a while.
She's
So I
probably-
graduated in 96, and she was born 95.
Okay.
So, one.
I was there 92 to 96, but
There
we
you go.
had two different experiences.
Yes, we did.
because you were bringing your baby to class.
Yeah.
I was barely making it to class.
So she spent, I want to say it was either her third or probably her fourth birthday in Barry Salomon's class
Wow.
in the College of Communication. And it was this big auditorium in Diffenbaugh. And all of a sudden, I don't even remember how, it was my daughter's birthday and everybody knew. And she was so shy back then, and the entire class sang happy birthday to her. But
that's
she would be like right there in my feed, or she was very quiet, very calm.
So you did
just
it.
worked-
You
I
went to
did it.
college when you were a single mom and you had a baby to tote with you everywhere.
Pretty much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I would go to school from 8 to noon, and then from noon to 3 I would see my daughter, and then from 3:30 to midnight I would go to Publix and work there, and then at midnight I would leave, I would go on a run to work out, and then I would study, and then I would do it all over. And not every single day, but
exhausted. Let's do it.
but that was, so when people now are like, oh, I'm too tired, I'm like, don't
Yeah.
even go there.
So I'm interested to know about your husband, your ex-husband.
My ex-husband, yeah.
How did you guys meet?
We met at my work. He happened to be one of my residents, and I noticed that he was a little bit older. Like we just met randomly. He came to the office, and then I toured his house. So we met at work, and I had no idea.
Now, when you say residence, you have to fill everybody in. What do you do for work?
I'm a business manager at Jackson Properties, so I do student housing.
Okay. And that's how you met him.
That's how I met him.
And you obviously got married to him, but he was harboring a secret that you didn't know about.
And I didn't know. I had no idea that 4 months prior to me meeting him, he had just gotten out of a year-long rehab facility.
Wow.
And I actually didn't find that out. I didn't find out that it was a year-long till last year.
Wow.
So
And you were married to him for 10 years.
pretty much.
Was he an alcoholic the entire time?
So I was told that that he's been drinking since he was 12. So
What kind of obstacles and challenges did that present for you during your marriage?
well, there was a lot of confusion because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what it was. I'm not a big drinker at all. I was a DD, and I loved dancing, so I was a DD. It didn't matter what everybody did. I just piled everybody in the car. And when my friends would drink, so I just thought, this is what people do here. You just drink. When you overdrink, this is what happens. So to me, when we first started dating, nothing was off. My friends were doing it, so it was not a big deal. And then during the marriage, it was like gaps that couldn't explain, or where were you, or what did that happen, or just. But he always had a good reason, a good excuse, and he is very eloquent, articulate, very good with his words. So it just it just made sense. But then he would disappear. Oh, where are you? And all of a sudden he's 3 states away, or he's on the other side of the country. Oh wait, I'm in Amsterdam.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, what? So it was just a ball of confusion for several years, because it wasn't all like that, right? It was like really, really good, and then it dips, and then I'm so sorry, and I'm sorry about that. That won't happen again. I didn't find. So I think we got married in 2006. I didn't really find out he was an alcoholic till 12.
How did you find out?
I just started putting the pieces together, and I remember sitting there going, "You're an alcoholic," and mind you, I had no idea he had been to more. I mean, again, I found out the year-long last year. I found out that there's a 3rd rehab last year. So I was like, oh, I had no idea. Okay.
And he wasn't telling you about the rehabs he was going to?
That he
and
had
y'all
gone
had
to.
a couple of beautiful children during the marriage. So you were working full-time, raising 2 children.
Oh, yeah.
And combating somebody who was constantly lying to you and trying to persuade you that everything was okay.
Yeah.
What did you do when you ultimately found out that he was an alcoholic? Did you give him an ultimatum? Like, what happened?
I mean, you give a lot of those, and then it was kind of like preparing to leave. It was like, okay, what do I do now? I help him. If you're gonna help, because we had 2 kids together, it was like, okay, what are you gonna do? Let's help someone that needs help.
Yeah.
There's someone that I care for. That's the father of my children. But then at some point, it was like, no, I need to find my way out. Like, I'm gonna die here. This is not okay. I'm gonna die. My kids are gonna die. Somebody's gonna. This is not good. And so slowly but surely, I started pulling myself out of that relationship, whether it was financially. You know, I had bought him a store here in town, so he was running that, but then he put that to the ground also. So, but I was fortunate that I had my own money, my own resources. Like, he couldn't touch some of that stuff, and it was mine. It was like you just kind of came in and already had it.
So you were planning.
I was planning, but by the time I met him, I was a real estate investor already. I had multiple houses. I had my own house. I think I had a total of 4 or 5 houses at the time. So I had my stuff together. I mean, I knew who I was, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what my goals were. So, and I never would give up on my job to say, oh, I'll just stay home, or whatever the case may be.
When we come back, I want to talk about kind of how you were after the relationship parted and what you've gone through challenge-wise then and how you've overcome those challenges.
Let's do it.
Wow. What do you think about Ellie?
She's amazing, and I love how she shares with us that the counselors at her high school said, you're not going to make it. And she said, that's not me. I'm not taking that on. I'm going to make it. And now I'm excited to hear her tell us the story of how she prepared herself so that she was able to leave.
Yeah, it's another one of those things, the power of just, you know, an important person to a child at a developmental phase where they really need support. If it's not there, boy, that little voice in the ear, it really could have changed her trajectory had she believed that and internalized it and accepted that. So it's just a lesson, don't believe everything you're told. So anyway, we'll have more with Ellie and Carrie Roan right after this.
I went to lunch with one of my former clients the other day, and she's doing great. She took the money from her settlement and she started her own company buying and selling vehicles, which is really cool because she was in a car crash and then needed a new vehicle. And so now she's able to help other folks out.
Most of our clients, they find that one of the most frustrating things is the dealing with the vehicle.
Oh, well, losing your car can totally disrupt your life.
You can lose your livelihood over it. If you can't get to work, or you know, what's the worst thing with our clients is we're just trying to help them get well. But if they can't get to the health care that they need, you know, that's just another setback.
One of the typical things about a comeback story is you take the pain and the struggles and the challenges that you've been through, and you use that as the fire that kind of motivates you to do something good for other people. Yeah. And so I love that because now our client did exactly that, like literally to the T.
And we are back for the second half of Carrie Roan's interview with Ellie Rosario.
So what's interesting to me about you is that you became successful, so successful on your own while you're strategizing, how do I get away from an unhealthy situation for my children and from me?
Right.
And I understand that you didn't have a lot of help from the court system.
Nope.
What happened there?
You know, it was one of those that everyone tells you, leave those situations. But then when you leave, there's nothing out there to help you. I remember one of the judges saying, until he hurts them, there's nothing you can do. And that was a big blow. Yeah. Or, oh, it's okay. Like, no, it's not an emergency if he drinks and drives with them. So that was a challenge. That was frustrating. And that was just me being naive, thinking, of course, the system is going to help us. Like, you know, why wouldn't they? You know, we're going through this. You know, why wouldn't anyone help the children and be okay with it? So that was hard, and I just continue to think, okay, that was naive of you to believe that. But every book that I've read or every article that I've read says, no, that's exactly what happens in the court system. So I just hadn't read them yet. So
you had to overcome all of those kind of instances where you were frustrated by the court or by the way that Florida law is constructed. Yep. And then what inspired you to write your book?
Wow. So
it's called Own Your Fire.
Own Your Fire,
which
yeah.
you have a lot of fire. So
well, and it's funny because I'm like, why did I named it that? Because my girlfriend Ruth Ellen's like, you're a girl on fire. Like, as soon as she met me, she's like, you're a girl on fire. So that song from Alicia Keys is always in the back of my mind. And I just kind of found a way to play. And I'm like, okay, if I'm fire, how do I, and then I always tell people, I'm like, own your stuff, man. Like, don't blame anybody else. You know, own what you've done.
Don't be a victim.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I kind of put it together. But I've been writing my whole life. Just people didn't know. And so I've been writing since I was probably my younger daughter's age, 10, 11, 12, and I still have all of my stuff from back then. And so, but I never wrote to share. Obviously, my entire relationship is in writing because I have all those journals from all that time period, of the typo, the 3D floppy disk, you name it, the jumpy thing.
Yeah.
I have them. So I started looking them up and putting it all together, and I was like, there's got to be a reason why I went through all this, because this sucked. Like, it really did suck. And how did I not see it? What did I miss? And those are the kinds of things that you start questioning yourself. And then I said, okay, I went through this. I learned a lot, but now what? So I can tell someone here and there when they ask me for advice, I'm like, no, there's got to be a bigger way to make a bigger impact and help others, even if I just help one person overcome one day of their life, or have them help their child in one instance, or have them move and, I don't know, finish a triathlon or something like that. Like, whatever that may be, I was like, I just need to do this. And all of a sudden I started typing, I started putting all these things together, I started looking through everything that I had, and
I love that.
Came from it.
I love that, sharing your story so that other people can learn from it and hopefully be ahead of the curve, whereas you weren't.
Exactly. I was like, I wish somebody had told me all this and given me all this. And it was like Brene Brown. Through all of this, I started listening to her. I didn't know who the heck she was. And it was like, you share your story not for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others. So like, when you're ready to do that, and so at that point I was like, I'm ready to share it. Not for me, not to put me out there.
Not to be an egotistical maniac or anything. Yeah.
I was like, I was like, at this point, it's for the benefit of others. And that's when I knew I was ready to share it. So,
where can people find your book?
They can find it on Amazon and at Hearth and Soul here locally.
Okay. So you mentioned triathlons.
Yes.
And I'm an athlete. Everybody knows I still play soccer, and I love doing anything athletic.
Which I love. I would love to see you on the field. I'm not going to lie.
But I cannot believe when I meet people like you who have done triathlons and an Ironman or an Ironwoman, whatever you want to call it, that requires so much training and intensity and time. So tell us a little bit about what those races entail and how you could possibly fit in time to train them while you're raising teens, preteens.
Well, I haven't raced in a couple of years. I was racing a lot when I was during my relationship, and even after. It does take a lot of time. And I remember, I started with a half Ironman. And people are like, are you crazy? Why are you starting with a half Ironman?
And what's a half for people that don't know?
Sorry. So it's a swim, bike, run. So a half is a 1.2 mile swim. I want to say 56-mile bike ride. That sucks that I can't remember. And then a half marathon, so a 13.1 mile run at the end. So at that point, I was doing marathons. So I said, well, I'm not going to start with a sprint. I wasn't trying to be cocky or anything. It's just I enjoy the distance. I enjoy that 3 to 4 hour workout.
Suffering.
Yeah, a little bit after a while. So I started with a half, and then I just kind of went down and then went back up. And I remember looking at the memes and the quotes, and it was like, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. And it, you don't get that at first. You really don't. You're thinking that you have to like kill your body and go out there and do it all. And you do. I mean, we all did. But then at the end of the day, this is what keeps you going. This is what gets you through the race when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's, anything. I remember at mile 20th of my Ironman, my feet started hurting. And it was freezing. I had trained to be in the heat.
Where was it?
Panama City Beach.
Okay.
And it was freezing. I hated every second of it because I am not a cold weather person. I got chills right now just thinking about it. I got cold again. And it was like 20-mile-an-hour winds. It's really cold. And at mile 20th of my run, I still had the 5 layers that I had on the bike because that's how cold I was.
Wow.
My feet started hurting. And I said, oh no, not today. Not today. And so I told myself, I was like, you're not hurting. And I had made myself, I told myself, I was like, if I'm not gonna win this race, I'm gonna make sure that I have a good time at this race and that everybody that I pass has a good time. So I had my hair like this.
Oh, cute.
In pigtails, so these things are flopping all over. And at mile 20, I was like, you're not hurting. Your feet are not hurting.
How many more miles did you have to go?
6.2.
Whew. So you at that point are just mind over matter.
It's just mind over matter. You're not
Seems
hurting.
like that's how you've lived your entire life, though.
Pretty
like from
much.
high school, being pregnant, to having a baby in college.
Yep.
And, becoming the owner of several properties and what you do for business. I mean, everything that you do is mind over matter.
It really is. It's like putting your mind out there to what you want to do, going out there and achieving it. Of course it's going to be hard. Of course it's going to suck. But if you don't keep going and drive, so I'm very driven and determined and self-motivated. I think that's a big thing. I don't need someone else to pat me in the back. It's nice. It feels good.
Yeah.
You know, oh, that was nice of you. But I don't need it. I wake up every day and I'm like, I know what I need to do to make the right choices.
Did you learn to be that way, or did somebody teach you that?
I've always been like this. I've always been high on life, I call it, and go-getter and driven, and oh, I'll just do it. It's fine.
I love it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been so inspirational. It's been awesome.
Oh, what a fantastic story. You know, I did read her book, and she does present as someone who is just really is on fire. And despite all that high energy, which is obvious, she just kept getting, you know, obstacles. She just it reads like somebody's just constantly being tested.
Yeah.
But the way she deals with that, though, is she meets that challenge and she rises above it, and it's almost like a ladder that she seems to be on. That's the way I kind of visualize it. Every one of these tests has made her stronger and has elevated her status and her strength and her resolve.
Just like you talked about, in the race, it's 90% mental, 10% physical.
Yeah.
It seems like every single challenge she goes, all right, you know, my feet aren't hurting.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna go and rise above.
Yeah, and she's a businesswoman. She didn't give a whole lot of attention to that because, I mean, her book's almost 300 pages long. There's a lot of story here that we can't possibly cover on our one little program, but I would encourage people to pick it up and read it because she really does, you know, get her head right. And she's running a business while she's doing this. She owns multiple properties. She has her own home. She's building wealth through real estate, and she's learning while she's doing that. She's not, you know, she didn't come up in, you know, the continental U.S. You know, she had a different experience. She had to come into a town, and anybody who's moved into this town like I have 30 years ago, and I'm still an outsider in a lot of ways. So, you know, you're here, you're homegrown, and so can you imagine someone coming into this culture shock and being able to thrive like she has? And unfortunately, she didn't get that early encouragement when she was here. So we'll come back after the break and we'll talk a little bit more about her story and her struggle with trying to love someone with an addiction right after this.
You know what's funny? When law firms advertise that they'll give a free consultation, every consultation we give is free, unless we can get you a settlement based on your injuries.
Right.
Every time you give me a call, it's free.
Yeah.
I want you to give me a call.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to charge you unless we actually get you something for your case.
That's right. You don't have to pay me anything unless I win the case.
Right.
And on top of that, I'm going to pay for all of the court costs and the deposition costs and medical records costs and expert opinion costs. All of that's coming out of my pocket. And if we don't win the case, then we eat those costs at no charge to you.
Right. So we don't take a case we don't believe in because it's not in our interest.
Right.
And we don't minimize or devalue your case because that's also not in our interest. Right. So it makes everything fair.
If you have a lawyer on a contingency fee, you can hire the very best lawyer.
And we are back talking about Ellie Rosario and her wonderful book and her incredible life journey. She's only in her early 40s, but she's almost lived, it feels like 2 lives, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So Dana, you have a background in social work, so I wanted to ask you about your experience working with folks who are living with somebody, trying to love somebody that has an addiction.
It's hard. I've seen this. I've seen mothers like Ellie struggle with this because their children, because of their other parents' disease and their inability to get in front of it for very long or get control of it very long, a lot of times people try to love those people through it, thinking, you know, if I could just fill whatever void it is that is missing that's making you turn to this substance, we can get through it. And, you know, once you make a commitment and once you have children with somebody, you are as invested in them as they, probably sometimes more invested in them and their success than they are. And it takes a long time for stopping that to not look like quitting or giving up or breaking your vows. And there's just all that guilt, you know, when you enter a relationship and you just want it to work, but you can't change that, and you can't love somebody through their addiction. That's a choice that they've got to make. But I like that she had, I don't know if anybody turned her on to it, but she got into these natural coping skills and coping mechanisms like journaling. Journaling is a very powerful way. It's like therapy. When you get these thoughts and these feelings out of you, sometimes it's just saying them out loud to another person and, you know, normalizing it, seeing that they're not going to think you're crazy or nuts because of it, or sometimes it's putting it on paper, but just getting it outside of yourself. Another thing that I was encouraged is that she's very honest with her children. You can't cover for an addict and what they do. You can't spin it whenever they know that their father is driving them impaired while under the influence, and that's got to be scary to them. And so, you know, when they're scared and they're coming home, they don't know what's safe. It's important to model strength for your children, and you don't want to overshare. You don't want to share things that are beyond their ability to understand, but pretending that what they're experiencing isn't actually happening, that doesn't help them, and it makes them not trust you.
Yeah.
Because they're like, look, I thought I could trust you, and you're not even dealing with this. So as hard as it is, and you certainly don't want to do anything to ever disparage your children's other parent, but that's not the same thing as sugarcoating something and presenting a reality that is incongruent with what they're experiencing.
Absolutely. One thing that stuck out to me too is how Ellie said that when she went through the court system, she thought, okay, now I've made a decision to get out of this situation to protect my children.
Right.
I'm expecting some help.
Yeah.
And she didn't get as much help or the resources that she thought she could. What are some of the organizations in Tallahassee that you can reach out to if you're struggling with somebody in your household?
Well, there's a couple of things. I always encourage people, women especially in these situations, to look at the resources available through Refuge House. That's not just a place for temporary shelter, it's a place for resources to help you get the legal help you need. If you need any you know, childcare, whatever it is that you're needing, you need help interviewing, getting clothes to wear at an interview, whatever it is you need to get on your feet and get your strength back, that's a good resource. I always tell people to call 211 Big Ben, because that's kind of a clearinghouse of all social services. They're first of all, they're trained counselors you can talk to right then, and then they also have links to other resources. But that's the number one thing, is to get help. But when I was a social worker, I used to do supervised visitation when people had to have supervised visits with their children. But it's a big bar before someone is only allowed supervised visitation. They've got to actually hurt the children, put them in active danger, and that was just shy of what Ellie was dealing with. That's why she couldn't get the help. So I know why she must be frustrated, but know that there are resources, people out there who care about you. And we want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, Kimmy Hogan, for filling in for Jimmy Facig. And if you have a Come Back Stronger story or know someone who does, please reach out to us, and we're going to have a QR code that you can scan that'll link you to our website, so you can reach out to us and share those stories. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000.
Really?
He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job.
Yeah.
That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money.
Right.
And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. Right. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.